It has been no secret that I've spent the last 3 years or so attempting to master the art of rest and rejuvenation, aka sleep. And you know from the ever-growing How to Sleep playlist that we don't mess around with the most restorative, regenerating, detoxifying part of our 24-hour day. So wouldn't it be interesting to see what happens when all those good sleep habits get tossed out the window? Well, I got some news for you. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftandbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic manner. Now, after a few recent trips and deviations from the longevity routine, the windows are wide open and the delta wave force has been disrupted. So I figured we might as well look at the N of 1 data to see what exactly set me up to have some of the worst sleep in almost 2 years. Yeah. And the most interesting part of all this is the fact that these small deviations from my strategy are things that the average person does on the reg without even thinking about it. Following norms that have been pre-programmed by society, which has our cellular and metabolic function being meh at best. And if you've been around these parts, you know that we strive for just a little bit better than meh when it comes to our everyday mood, feel, cognition, and biological function. So with that, we'll set the stage with a quick overview of some of the protocols that I've been following for the last couple of years. Then talk about the Black Swan event, which wasn't really a surprise, but let's just act like it was. And finally, dive into the data to see the rest and recovery chaos which ensued. Sounds pretty fun, right? Oh, and I guess this is a perfect time to tell you that the data from this video will be ever so generously provided by the Oura Ring, an all-in-one sleep tracker, which What was that? Oura Ring doesn't sponsor us. They don't like how we keep breaking their algorithm with different biohacks. Well, okay. So we're the opposite of sponsored. Got it. With that, let's jump in. My current longevity protocol. Here's the deal. Optimizing one's day-to-day cellular, metabolic, biochemical, and physiological efficiency while keeping the future in mind is a non-stop, ever-changing endeavor. I'm constantly tweaking and trying new things as new information arises. Thus, the official protocol is a living, breathing routine which encompasses things such as movement, nutrition, fasting, circadian alignment, technology control, environment, nature, strategic supplementation, meal timing, and, obviously, sleep. These are just a few of the boxes I strive to check with strategic habits deployed as routines each and every day. And the two that we are going to hone in on for the context of this video are the last ones, meal timing and sleep, as they've formed quite an interesting relationship over the last few years from my N of 1 data. Here's a little background. Over the past few years, as we've talked about in depth in videos such as these, I've become an early eater, typically finishing my last energy consumption food or drink by early afternoon. This ends up shaping out to be something like a 24 protocol, 20 hours of daily fasting with 4 hours of daily feeding. I personally eat between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., which is based off the theory that we humans are more optimized when we consume our larger meals earlier in the day. Not only setting us up for more efficient cellular and metabolic operations, but also playing a role in sleep quality. And I will link all the videos and research reviews we've done on these topics down below in the description. I'd also now like to take the moment to add a disclaimer. This protocol is what I found works for me at this moment in my life. There is no definitive science that says this is the best protocol for each and every intelligent walking ape on the planet. There are just way too many variables at play to make any broad conclusions with conviction across an entire population. And quite frankly, It always depends. Getting back on track, with the slow and sustainable implementation of this protocol, as well as some good old-fashioned hard work on sleep hygiene, I've seen a drastic improvement in a lot of sleep metrics that I've been tracking over the last 3 years. And since I'm very routine-based, I love the opportunity to see how an outlier event impacts what I would call some pretty consistent data. So without further ado, let's cue the disruption in the force. The Black Swan event. All right, it wasn't really a Black Swan event, but I mean, everyone likes a little bit of drama. And it was a great book. This blip in my nearly 2-year unblipped routine happened to be something that I used to face all the time. Business travel. In fact, I just made an updated video on how to stay healthy during it. I guess inspiration really does come from traveling or being sleep deprived, waiting on delayed flights. Anyway, over the last few months, I've had to embark on some business travel which deviated me out of my longevity groove and had my eating, sleep, and overall routine thrown in a little bit of a loop. The trip we'll be focusing on for today's video is a nice little Monday to Wednesday endeavor where I ended up shifting my feeding window to the more traditional dinner-centric model and ended up seeing some interesting things in the data, and ultimately was a nice reminder, at least for me, on why I operate on the schedule that I do. With that background, I bet you're wondering, what the hell happened? So let's dive into the dashboard and see. The data. First, to provide some context, we are looking at the time frame of early April to beginning of June. With the Black Swan trip, I don't know why I keep saying that, but with the Black Swan trip being May 16th to May 19th. And what we're going to be focusing on as we look at these trends and data points is the deviation from the average of that 2-month baseline. Now, there's a key date or night that we're going to call out here because it's the data from the night I closed out my feeding window, the latest I have done in years, around 8 p.m. I know, but it's late for me. What can I say? This magical date is May 18th, and it represents the sleep from May 17th to 18th. For additional context, this is about 6 hours later than I typically finish eating. And this is also 1 hour before I go to bed. I'm in bed at 9. I know, pretty lame. So let's take a gander and see what happened. First, we will start with readiness and sleep scores. These are 2 high-level metrics provided by Oura to indicate how ready you are for the day and how well you slept the night before. As you can imagine, the latter, the sleep, rolls up into the first, the overall readiness score. And these scores are made up of a large number of data points, which are assessed by deviation from baseline to gauge how ready you are to have a damn day. Are they perfect? Or for that matter, is any of this data 100% accurate? Probably not. But as long as it's consistent, it can provide some valuable insights around relative change due to lifestyle or routine modifications. So in terms of this data, we see a moderate correlation between these 2 scores with a oh-so-nice dip in readiness on the 18th, retracting over 20 points from its average. Interestingly, sleep score was pretty consistent to baseline. I don't know about you, but I think we're gonna need a deeper dive into some more granular data. Next, 2 huge rest and recovery metrics, heart rate variability and resting heart rate. We talk about these 2 in great detail in this "How do I know if I'm getting good sleep?" video here. At a high level, HRV or heart rate variability is the disparity between your heartbeats or time in between each beat, typically measured in milliseconds. This is used as an assay for recovery, specifically what nervous system state you're in. The higher your HRV is from baseline, the more relaxed you were the night before, and the better physiological state you were in for recovery. Next, average resting heart rate is pretty straightforward. Your heart's average beats per minute at rest. And a higher than average resting heart rate typically means you have some sort of internal stressor that you're dealing with. So, did I have an internal stressor going on or what? Let's look. Since optimal rest and recovery typically is associated with a higher HRV and a lower resting heart rate, these metrics are inversely related or negatively correlated when in an optimal state. And as you can see, this is mostly the case on my chart. But what does May 18th have to say? Oh boy. HRV, crazy low. Resting heart rate, crazy high. We basically want the opposite. This is a clear indication that my body was more stressed out than normal for some reason or another during this night. I wonder why. But let's not stop here. Let's continue to dig just a little bit deeper into the data and take a look at the stages of sleep, specifically the most restorative and regenerating one, deep sleep. This slow wave stage of sleep is estimated to comprise anywhere from 15 to 25% of the average person's night. It's where the body goes into deep repair and regeneration. It's where the immune system strengthens and where we clean out a pretty important piece of our pretty cool meat suit, our brain. Now, most of our deep sleep happens in the first half of the night. So if there's a disruption in the force close to bedtime, there's a high likelihood that deep sleep might be impacted. And I personally have become so infatuated with deep sleep over the years that I made a full video on how I hack it and get significantly more deep sleep than the average Joe or Jane. So, what happened with my deep sleep? Well, after starting with an average of a little over 3 hours a night, it was cut in half. Damn. But don't worry, we'll talk about why in just a little bit. In the meantime, I got a question. How do we know something wasn't off, like sleep timing or duration? I mean, I was traveling, right? Well, it's an excellent question. And to be honest, I don't really remember. But the Oura ring does. Let's look. Bedtime and total sleep duration were right in line with averages. And you can actually see the only points that they were off were due to 2 late travel days and a wedding. So these sleep quality stats were totally mangled, all while still getting to bed at the same time and sleeping for the same duration. What other additional assays can give us some insights? Funny you should ask. 2 I like to keep an eye on are core body temperature and respiratory rate. Both metrics are used to gauge how hard your body is working or how stressed it is throughout the night. In an ideal world, you want these to both be at baseline or a tad bit lower. Interestingly, here we see a lower than normal respiratory rate and a higher than normal core body temperature, indicating that something was off, which at this point I think we could all agree on, right? Finally, I want to circle back and ask one more question about these stages of sleep. If I got the same duration of overall sleep, but only half of the deep restorative sleep that I typically get, then what the hell did I do the rest of the night? Oh, that one's easy. I spent an extra hour and change in light, non-restorative sleep. Pretty dope, right? And also, while talking sleep stages, interestingly enough, I got a fair amount of REM sleep or dreaming sleep, which may very well elicit a new N of 1 experiment to tease out if there is a consistent association here for me. So we'll get that one on the list. As for now, let's talk about what I think probably happened here. My overall analysis. Well, first off, I think that this data backs up my previous hypothesis that meal timing plays a role when it comes to my sleep quality. But it's not only the meal timing that makes an impact here. I would argue that it's a combination of the typical stressors of travel, including the travel itself, altered routine, sleeping in a totally new place, which there's some interesting data on, artificial light and noises in the room, plus the additional psychological stress of just work travel in general. This list can go on and on, especially with little yet important things that can throw off sleep vibes. That being said, I would personally conclude that the big late night meal was a major player in this particular night for a number of different reasons. First, by throwing off my normal digestive routine and making my digestive system work during hours that it's typically resting, in this case into the early part of the night, which, you may ask, what's the big deal there? Mainly because digestion is a high energy process that requires a lot of blood flow. this can potentially redelicate energy and blood flow from other parts of the body and impair other restorative and rejuvenation processes. Also, as you recall from this deep dive here, when melatonin, our master sleep hormone, is high in circulation, naturally happening around bedtime, it's actually been shown to bind to receptors in key digestive organs such as the pancreas and liver, essentially putting them into a rest mode, which is awesome if we don't have a full course meal to digest. So this can further impair the digestion process and elongate the disruption. And as you can imagine, due to the energy demand, digestion increases core body temperature, which we want to go down for optimal sleep onset and sleep quality. Now, I want to make it clear and make sure I call out that due to my unique protocols, I most certainly saw a greater impact in my data than someone who doesn't follow an early eating schedule probably would. But in my eyes, it gave me a good look into what I may be calling normal if I didn't deploy the strategy that I have. And if this were the case, I would probably expect the delta in a lot of these data points to be much less pronounced, because my baseline on average would probably be worse. So on this one, my prosecution rests. This shitty sleep was mainly a byproduct of a unusually late big meal, and secondly, an altered routine with added stressors of travel. And no one likes a hotel bed. I mean, come on. And I would only hope that this deep dive and analysis brought just a little bit of value your way. But more importantly, hopefully get you pondering a little bit. Asking yourself if you could be potentially leaving any cellular or metabolic efficiency on the table. I'll just answer that one for you. We all are. The real question is, how much? And is it worth an experiment or two of your own? But don't ask me. I'm just a crazy dude on the internet who happens to host weekly longevity challenges in Patreon, where we as a group implement longevity-focused sustainable change week by week, habit by habit, focusing on getting healthy from the inside out. If you're interested, all the links for that will be in the description below. And I have a feeling we're going to be focusing on some sleep strategies this week. Just a hunch. Because we all know good sleep doesn't just happen. You have to make it happen. And when you do, you're never going to want to go back to that subpar, sporadic, I'll sleep when I'm dead lifestyle. Good sleep just feels too good. So make the intentional choice to start owning that shit today. Or sleeping on that shit tonight. Because if you didn't already know, sleep is when daily learning gets instilled into memory. Who knew sleeping on it was actually a effective strategy? Give it a go tonight.